The arrival. The massive Zarkian hunting vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its sleek obsidian hull gleaming in the faint starlight. On the bridge, Supreme Hunter Krasus surveyed the holographic display of the primitive blue-green world spinning slowly before him. His mandibles clicked in anticipation. At last, he growled, a new world to conquer, new prey to hunt. His second-in-command, Vexlar, approached with a datapad. Supreme Hunter, preliminary scans indicate a technologically inferior species populating the third planet. They appear to be in the early stages of space exploration, but possess no significant defenses beyond their atmosphere. Krasus's compound eyes gleamed with predatory excitement. Excellent. These humans will provide good sport. Prepare the hunting parties. We'll begin with isolated settlements to gauge their capabilities. As the crew bustled about, making final preparations, Krasus reflected on the long journey that had brought them here. The Zarkians were the undisputed apex predators of their sector of the galaxy. For millennia, they had traveled from world to world, seeking new challenges and adding the most worthy specimens to their collection of trophies. But in recent centuries, the thrill of the hunt had begun to wane. Too many species fell too easily, offering no real test of the Zarkians' superior skills and technology. Krasus had pushed his people to explore further, to seek out truly formidable prey that might rekindle their passion for the hunt. When their long-range probes had detected Earth, a planet teeming with life, and just beginning to reach for the stars, Krasus knew they had found their next great adventure. Supreme Hunter, Vexlar interrupted his musings. The stealth landers are prepared. Which region shall we target first? Krasus studied the global map, his gaze settling on a sparsely populated area. Here, he said, indicating a rugged forested region. This terrain will provide ample cover for our hunters to observe the humans up close before we begin culling their numbers. As the Zarkian ship drew closer to Earth, cloaking fields engaged to render it invisible to the primitive human detection systems. Krasus felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. Soon, very soon, they would set foot on this new world and begin the glorious hunt. Little did the Zarkians know that their carefully laid plans were about to encounter a force beyond their comprehension. In a small town nestled at the edge of the forest, Sheriff Sarah Cooper was working late, poring over reports of strange sightings in the area. Campers and hikers had reported eerie lights in the sky and unexplained noises deep in the woods. She dismissed most of it as overactive imaginations, but the sheer volume of reports was starting to gnaw at her. Sarah ran a hand through her short-cropped gray hair and sighed. At 45, she'd seen her fair share of odd occurrences in this town, but something about this felt different. She couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing. A sharp rap at the door startled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, reaching instinctively for her sidearm. The door swung open to reveal Jake Hawkins, a local park ranger and Sarah's longtime friend. His usually cheerful face was etched with worry. "Sarah, you need to see this," he said, holding up his phone. Sarah took the device, squinting at the grainy night vision footage. At first, all she could make out were trees and underbrush. Then something moved, and her breath caught in her throat. A tall, insectoid figure stalked through the frame, its alien features unmistakable, even in the low-quality video. "What the hell is that?" she whispered, looking up at Jake with wide eyes. He shook his head. "I don't know, but I've got 3 different cameras that picked up similar images tonight. Whatever these things are, they're all over the forest." Sarah's mind raced. If this was some kind of hoax, it was an incredibly elaborate one. But if it wasn't, she stood abruptly, grabbing her jacket. "We need to get out there now. Call in every available deputy and ranger. And Jake," she added, fixing him with a stern look, "not a word of this to anyone else yet. The last thing we need is a panic." As they hurried out to their vehicles, neither Sarah nor Jake noticed the faint shimmer of a cloaked Zarkian scout ship passing silently overhead. Deep in the forest, the first Zarkian hunting party emerged from their concealed lander. Rektha, a seasoned hunter, breathed deeply, savoring the rich scents of this alien world. His exoskeleton tingled with excitement as he signaled to his team to spread out. "Remember," he subvocalized through their neural link, "observe only for now. We must learn the humans' patterns before we begin the true hunt." The Zarkians moved with preternatural stealth through the underbrush, their adaptive camouflage rendering them nearly invisible. They passed close to human campsites, studying the oblivious creatures as they laughed and talked around their fires. Rektha found himself both intrigued and dismissive of these humans. They were so soft, so vulnerable without the protection of their primitive structures and machines. And yet there was something in their eyes, a spark of intelligence and determination that gave him pause. As the night wore on, the hunting party ranged further into the wilderness. They were so focused on observing the humans that they failed to notice they were being watched in turn. In the deepest, darkest part of the forest, amber eyes gleamed from the shadows. A low growl rumbled in a massive chest as a creature caught the unfamiliar scent of the alien invaders. For centuries, it had been the apex predator in these woods, its existence hidden from the human world. But now, new hunters had entered its domain. The creature's lips pulled back in a snarl, revealing gleaming fangs. The full moon was rising, and with it, an ancient power stirred. The Zarkians had come to Earth seeking worthy prey. They were about to find it, in a form they could never have anticipated. As the first rays of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Rektha signaled his team to return to the lander. They had gathered valuable intelligence on human behavior and vulnerabilities. Soon, the real hunt would begin. But as they made their way back, Rektha couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, something that didn't show up on their advanced sensors. He dismissed it as an overactive imagination, bred from too many easy hunts on lesser worlds. It would prove to be a fatal mistake. First contact. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting dappled shadows through the forest canopy, Sheriff Sarah Cooper and Ranger Jake Hawkins led a small team deep into the woods. They moved cautiously, eyes scanning the underbrush for any sign of the strange creatures from Jake's footage. "I still can't believe we're doing this," muttered Deputy Rodriguez, the youngest member of their group. "Shouldn't we have called in the feds or something?" Sarah shook her head, her expression grim. "And tell them what?" "That we got video of bug-eyed monsters traipsing through our forest. We need more evidence before we start raising alarms." Jake, who had been examining some broken branches, suddenly held up a hand for silence. He pointed to a small clearing ahead, where the underbrush had been flattened in a perfect circle about 30 feet in diameter. The group approached cautiously, weapons drawn. As they reached the edge of the clearing, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The grass and plants within the circle weren't just flattened, they were scorched, as if subjected to intense heat. "What could have done this?" Jake whispered, kneeling to examine the blackened vegetation. Before Sarah could respond, a high-pitched whine filled the air. The team looked up to see a shimmering distortion in the sky directly above the clearing. As they watched in stunned silence, the distortion resolved into a sleek, metallic craft unlike anything they had ever seen. "Take cover," Sarah shouted, diving behind a fallen log. The others scrambled for shelter, just as a hatch on the underside of the craft slid open. 3 tall, insectoid figures dropped to the ground, their segmented limbs absorbing the impact with ease. They were even more terrifying in broad daylight than they had been in Jake's grainy footage. Each alien stood at least 7 feet tall, with iridescent exoskeletons and multiple arms, ending in wickedly sharp claws. Sarah's mind raced as she observed the creatures from her hiding spot. They moved with a predator's grace, their bulbous eyes sweeping the clearing. She knew with cold certainty that they were hunters, and humans were their prey. One of the aliens activated a device on its arm, projecting a holographic display. It chittered something to its companions, gesturing at the scorched circle. Sarah realized with a start that they were examining the landing site of another of their ships. Suddenly, Deputy Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. He fumbled to silence it, but it was too late. The aliens' heads snapped toward the sound, mandibles clicking in what Sarah could only interpret as excitement. "Run," she shouted, breaking cover and firing her pistol at the nearest alien. The bullet sparked off its exoskeleton, seemingly causing no damage, but the surprise of the attack bought precious seconds for her team to retreat into the dense forest. The aliens let out piercing shrieks and gave chase, moving through the underbrush with terrifying speed and agility. Sarah's heart pounded as she ran, hearing the sounds of pursuit growing ever closer. Jake, bringing up the rear, suddenly cried out in pain. Sarah turned to see one of the aliens had launched some kind of barbed projectile, which had embedded itself in Jake's leg. He stumbled, and the alien closed in for the kill. Without hesitation, Sarah emptied her clip into the creature's face. This time, her bullets found a vulnerable spot. The alien shrieked in agony, ichor spraying from its ruined eyes. Its companions fell back, clearly surprised by the effectiveness of the human weapons. Taking advantage of the alien's momentary confusion, Sarah and Rodriguez hauled Jake to his feet and half-carried him as they continued their retreat. They could hear the enraged howls of the aliens behind them, but the sounds grew more distant as they pushed deeper into the forest. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, they finally stopped to catch their breath in a small ravine. Jake gritted his teeth as Sarah examined his wound. The barb had gone deep, and an angry red discoloration was already spreading around the entry point. "We need to get him to a hospital," Rodriguez said, his voice shaking. Sarah shook her head. "We can't risk leading those things back to town. And how would we explain this?" She gestured to the alien barb. "No, we need to hole up somewhere and try to contact help." Jake nodded weakly. "I know a place. Old hunting cabin about 2 miles north of here. It's isolated, stocked with supplies. Might have a radio we can use." Sarah helped Jake to his feet, supporting his weight. "Lead the way. Rodriguez, you're on rear guard. Keep your eyes peeled for any sign of those bastards." As they set off toward the cabin, Sarah's mind was in turmoil. They had just made first contact with an alien species, and it had immediately turned violent. She didn't know why these creatures were here or what they wanted, but one thing was clear: humanity was in grave danger. Little did Sarah know, the danger was far greater than she could have imagined. High above the earth, Supreme Hunter Krazisk received the report from the wounded hunting party. His mandibles clicked in irritation. "So," he growled, "these humans are not as helpless as we thought. Good. It has been too long since we had real sport." He turned to his second-in-command. "Prepare the main invasion force. It's time to show these primitives what real hunting looks like." As the massive Zarkian warships began to descend through Earth's atmosphere, the true battle for survival was about to begin. But in the deep shadows of the forest, amber eyes once again gleamed with primal intelligence. The full moon was approaching, and with it, humanity's greatest hope against the alien threat. The hunt was on, but the hunters were about to become the hunted. The werewolf emerges. As night fell, Sarah, Jake, and Rodriguez huddled in the dimly lit hunting cabin. They had managed to make it without further alien encounters, but Jake's condition was deteriorating rapidly. The angry red discoloration around his wound had spread, and he drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering feverishly. Sarah paced the small cabin, her mind racing. The ancient radio they'd found was useless, its components corroded beyond repair. They were cut off, with no way to warn the outside world of the impending threat. "We can't just sit here," Rodriguez said, his voice tight with tension. "Those things are out there, probably hunting us right now." Sarah was about to respond when a bone-chilling howl split the night air. It was like nothing she had ever heard before. Not quite wolf, not quite human, but something in between that made her hair stand on end. Jake's eyes snapped open, suddenly clear and alert. "Oh God," he whispered, "it's happening again." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, Jake began to convulse violently. She and Rodriguez rushed to hold him down, but his strength was incredible. As they watched in horror, Jake's body began to change. His muscles bulged and shifted, bones cracking as they elongated. Coarse hair sprouted across his skin, and his face contorted into a lupine muzzle filled with razor-sharp teeth. Where Jake had been moments before, a massive werewolf now stood, easily 8 feet tall and rippling with primal power. Sarah and Rodriguez backed away, weapons raised, but the creature made no move to attack. Instead, it turned its amber gaze to the cabin door, nostrils flaring. A moment later, they heard it too. The clicking of alien mandibles and the rustle of undergrowth as multiple creatures approached the cabin. The werewolf let out a low growl, positioning itself between the humans and the door. Sarah's mind reeled, struggling to process the impossible situation. Aliens and werewolves in the same night. But as the door burst open and the first Zarkian hunter entered, she pushed her disbelief aside and raised her weapon. The alien never had a chance to react. The werewolf was on it in a flash of fur and fangs, tearing through its exoskeleton with terrifying ease. Ichor sprayed as the creature howled in triumph, already turning to face the next threat. More Zarkians poured into the cabin, but between the werewolf's savage attacks and the concentrated fire from Sarah and Rodriguez's weapons, the aliens found themselves outmatched for the first time in living memory. As the last alien fell, its body twitching, Sarah cautiously approached the werewolf. The creature turned to her, chest heaving, muzzle dripping with alien blood. For a tense moment, she feared it might turn on them next. But then she saw the intelligence in its eyes. Jake was still in there somewhere. "Jake," she said softly, holstering her weapon. "Can you understand me?" The werewolf nodded slowly, a very human gesture that looked bizarre on its lupine features. Before Sarah could say more, the night was suddenly illuminated by harsh spotlights from above. The cabin's roof creaked and groaned. The cabin's roof creaked and groaned under the weight of something massive landing on it. Sarah, Rodriguez, and the werewolf Jake tensed, ready for another fight. Suddenly, the roof was torn away, revealing a much larger Zarkian vessel hovering above them. A gravelly voice boomed from the ship, speaking in surprisingly clear English. "Impressive, humans. You've proven to be more interesting prey than we anticipated. But the hunt has only just begun." The werewolf snarled, crouching as if to leap at the ship. Sarah placed a restraining hand on its muscled shoulder. "Wait," she whispered. "We need to be smart about this." As if in response to her words, distant explosions lit up the night sky. The alien ship's attention wavered, and Sarah seized the opportunity. "Run," she shouted, bolting for the tree line with Rodriguez close behind. The werewolf hesitated for a split second, then followed, easily overtaking them with its powerful strides. They plunged into the darkness of the forest, the sounds of alien pursuit fading behind them. Sarah's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Aliens were invading. Jake was a werewolf. And somehow, they had to find a way to save humanity. As they ran, Sarah noticed something strange. The werewolf wasn't just fleeing blindly. It was leading them somewhere. Its nose twitched constantly, following some scent only it could detect. After what felt like hours of running, they emerged into a moonlit clearing. Sarah gasped at the sight before her. Dozens of werewolves, in various states of transformation, stood in a loose circle. At the center, a silver-furred werewolf that seemed ancient and powerful regarded them with intelligent eyes. The Jake werewolf approached the silver one, lowering its head in a gesture of respect. A low growl rumbled from the elder's throat, and suddenly, Sarah could understand its words in her mind. "Welcome, Sheriff Cooper," the voice resonated in her head. "I am Argent, Alpha of this pack. We've been expecting you." Sarah struggled to find her voice. You knew we were coming." "How?" Argent's lupine features twisted into what might have been a smile. "We've protected these lands for centuries. hidden from human eyes. But we've always known a greater threat would come from the stars. Your friend Jake is one of us, turned years ago, but sworn to secrecy. When he was wounded by the aliens, it triggered his transformation outside the full moon cycle. Rodriguez, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. So, what now? How do we stop an alien invasion with a pack of werewolves? Argent's eyes gleamed with fierce determination. We hunt, Deputy Rodriguez. We hunt as we've never hunted before. Tables turned. Supreme Hunter Krazisk paced the bridge of his command ship, mandibles clicking in agitation. Reports from his hunting parties were streaming in, and they all told the same impossible tale. Their prey was fighting back with unexpected ferocity, led by creatures that seemed to blend human and animal traits. "It's not possible," he muttered. "No primitive species has ever offered this level of resistance." His second-in-command, Vexlar, approached cautiously. "Supreme Hunter, perhaps we should consider withdrawing. These humans, and their allies, are proving far more dangerous than anticipated." Krazisk whirled on him, eyes flashing with rage. "Withdraw? Never. We are the apex predators of the galaxy. We will not be driven off by some hairy primitives." As if in response to his words, alarms blared throughout the ship. Multiple hostile contacts approaching. A crew member shouted, They're coming from the forest canopy." Krazisk rushed to the view screen, his compound eyes widening at the sight. Dozens of werewolves were leaping from tree to tree with impossible agility, closing in on the Zarkian ships with terrifying speed. And they weren't alone. Human vehicles were emerging from hidden bunkers in the earth, bristling with weaponry that looked far more advanced than anything they'd observed so far. On the ground, Sarah Cooper stood beside Argent, coordinating the attack through a sophisticated communications network hidden beneath the forest floor. The werewolves' secret society had been preparing for this day for generations, accumulating technology and honing their skills to defend Earth from extraterrestrial threats. "All units, engage at will," Sarah ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around her. "Werewolf teams, focus on breaching their hull. Human squads, provide covering fire and take out their weapon systems." The night air filled with the sound of energy weapons, howls, and the screech of tearing metal as the werewolves tore into the alien ships with fang and claw. The Zarkians, for the first time in their long history of conquest, found themselves on the defensive. Krazisk watched in disbelief as one of his prized hunting vessels crashed to the ground, overrun by snarling werewolves. "This isn't happening," he growled. "Launch all fighters. Burn the forest to ash if you have to." But the Zarkian fighters found themselves outmatched by human aircraft that seemed to appear out of nowhere, piloted with impossible skill. What Krazisk didn't know was that many of these pilots were werewolves themselves, their enhanced reflexes and senses making them unbeatable in aerial combat. On the ground, the Jake werewolf fought alongside Sarah and Rodriguez, its powerful form providing cover as they advanced on one of the larger alien ships. Sarah's sheriff's uniform was torn and bloodied, but her eyes shone with fierce determination. "Jake," she shouted over the din of battle, "can you get us inside that ship?" The werewolf nodded, crouching down to allow Sarah and Rodriguez to clamber onto its back. With a mighty leap, it bounded towards the ship, dodging energy blasts and using abandoned alien vehicles as springboards. As they reached the hull, Jake's claws tore through the metal like it was tissue paper, creating an opening. Sarah and Rodriguez slipped inside, with Jake close behind, transforming back into his human form as the battle rage subsided. "Okay," Sarah said, surveying the alien corridor. "Let's find the bridge and end this." As they made their way through the ship, encountering sporadic resistance from panicked Zarkian crew members, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at how quickly the tide had turned. Humanity, with the help of its secret lycanthropic allies, was not only holding its own against the alien invaders, but actively pushing them back. Outside, Argent led the charge against the Zarkian ground forces. The ancient werewolf moved with a speed and power that belied its years, each swipe of its massive paws sending alien hunters flying. For Earth, Argent's howl resonated across the battlefield, rallying both humans and werewolves to press their advantage. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Zarkians were losing their grip on the situation. Their carefully laid plans and superior technology were crumbling in the face of humanity's unexpected allies and hidden strengths. The hunters had become the hunted, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance as Sarah, Jake, and Rodriguez closed in on the alien command center. Victory and revelation. Supreme Hunter Krazis stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching in disbelief as his invasion force crumbled before the combined might of humans and werewolves. Alarms blared all around him, warning of multiple hull breaches and critical systems failures. Supreme Hunter, Vexler urged, "We must retreat. We've lost nearly half our fleet, and the remaining ships are reporting heavy damage." Krazis snarled, raising a clawed hand as if to strike his second in command. But before he could respond, the bridge doors burst open. Sarah Cooper strode in, flanked by Jake and Rodriguez, all three bearing captured Zarkian weapons. "It's over," Sarah declared, her voice steady despite her ragged appearance. "Surrender now, and we might let you leave our planet alive." Krazisk's compound eyes narrowed as he studied the human leader. "You," he growled, "you're the one who's been coordinating this resistance." "How?" "You're primitives, barely out of your own solar system." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. "You made a lot of assumptions about us, and that was your first mistake. Humanity isn't alone on Earth, and we're a lot more prepared for threats like you than you realized." As if to emphasize her point, a massive furred arm snaked around Krazisk's throat. The Supreme Hunter found himself lifted off the ground, staring into the fierce eyes of a fully transformed Jake. "Impossible," Krazisk wheezed, struggling against the werewolf's iron grip. "That's a word you folks seem to use a lot," Rodriguez quipped, training his weapon on the other Zarkians on the bridge. "Maybe it's time to expand your vocabulary." Sarah stepped forward, locking eyes with Krazisk. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to order your remaining forces to stand down. You'll release any humans you've captured. And then you're going to leave Earth and never come back." "And why?" Krazisk managed to growl. "Would we do that?" Sarah's expression hardened. "Because if you don't, we'll have no choice but to destroy every last one of you. And trust me, we can do it. You've seen what we're capable of tonight. Don't make us show you how much worse it can get." For a long moment, the only sound on the bridge was the blare of alarms and the low growl rumbling in Jake's chest. Then, slowly, Krazisk's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Stand down." He croaked into his communication device. "All forces, cease combat operations." As the order spread through the remaining Zarkian fleet, an eerie quiet fell over the battlefield. Sarah moved to a control panel, activating the ship's external communications. "Attention, people of Earth." Her voice boomed across the forest and beyond, carried by both alien tech and the hidden network of the werewolves. "The immediate threat has been neutralized. The aliens are in retreat." A chorus of cheers and howls erupted from the ground below. Sarah allowed herself a moment to close her eyes, feeling the weight of the night's events. When she opened them again, she fixed Krazisk with a steely gaze. "Remember this night," she said softly. "Remember what happened when you thought you could hunt us, and spread the word to any other species thinking of invading Earth. We are not prey. We are not weak. We stand united, human, werewolf, and who knows what else, ready to defend our home." As the sun began to rise over the battered landscape, casting long shadows through the smoke and debris of battle, the Zarkian ships slowly lifted off. Earth's unlikely defenders watched them go, battered and bloodied but unbowed. Argent padded up to Sarah, his silver fur matted with alien ichor. "You did well." Sheriff Cooper, the ancient werewolf, said, his thoughts clear in Sarah's mind. But this is only the beginning. Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of his words. The world had changed irrevocably. Humanity would have to come to terms with the existence of both extraterrestrial threats and their supernatural protectors. As the last alien ship disappeared into the dawn sky, Sarah turned to her companions. Jake, now back in human form but still radiating an aura of primal power. Rodriguez, looking shell-shocked but standing tall. And Argent, the living embodiment of Earth's ancient guardians. "Well," Sarah said, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips, "I guess we got some explaining to do." The group shared a knowing look, each understanding that their actions had not only saved Earth from this threat, but had potentially altered the course of human history. The line between myth and reality had blurred, and humanity would never be the same. As they made their way back to what remained of the town, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and hope. Earth had faced its first major extraterrestrial threat and emerged victorious. And in doing so, they had sent a clear message to the stars. Humanity is not to be underestimated. We are not easy prey. And we are most certainly not alone. The Zarkians had come to Earth seeking worthy prey. They left with the knowledge that sometimes the hunters become the hunted. And Earth's guardians, human and werewolf alike, would be ready for whatever came next.